Roger Federer just gave Alex Eala a luxury watch, and the internet is losing its mind. What started as a quiet gesture backstage at the ATP Finals turned into one of the most talked about moments in tennis history. But this wasn't just about a gift. It was about respect, recognition, and a message that shook the entire sports world. Because when legends acknowledge rising stars, everything changes. And what happened next? Nobody saw it coming. November 2024, Turin, Italy. The ATP Finals were in full swing, and the tennis world had gathered to witness the year's best male players battle for the title. But tucked away in the sponsor lounges and media corridors, something else was brewing, something no one expected. Alex Eala wasn't supposed to be there. She had just finished a grueling WTA 125 tournament in Spain, fighting through injuries and exhaustion to keep her ranking intact. Her season had been brutal. She'd clawed her way through qualifiers, faced early exits at majors, and dealt with the kind of pressure that breaks most players her age. At 22, she was still searching for her breakthrough, still proving she belonged among the elite. But her management team had secured an invite to a special Nike event coinciding with the ATP Finals, a networking opportunity, a chance to meet sponsors, shake hands, and maybe catch a glimpse of the legends she'd grown up idolizing. She almost didn't go. She was tired, mentally drained, but something told her to show up. The event was held in a private suite overlooking the main court. Players, coaches, and executives mingled under dim lighting and the hum of champagne glasses. Eala stayed near the edges, uncomfortable in the spotlight. She wasn't used to these spaces. Women's tennis rarely shared the stage with the men's circuit. The pay gap, the media attention, the respect, it was all unbalanced. She knew it. Everyone knew it. And then, across the room, she saw him. Roger Federer. Retired for 2 years, but still the most magnetic presence in any room. He was talking with sponsors, laughing, relaxed. He'd been invited as a guest of honor, a living legend who transcended the sport. Eala had watched him win Wimbledon as a child. She'd studied his movement, his composure, his grace under pressure. And now, here he was, 10 meters away. She didn't approach him. She wouldn't dare. But fate had other plans. Federer's eyes scanned the room, and for a brief moment, they landed on her. He paused mid-conversation. Then, without hesitation, he excused himself and walked directly toward her. Eala froze. He extended his hand, smiled that familiar, warm smile, and said something she would never forget. "I've been following your journey. You fight like a champion." She barely managed to respond. Her mind was racing. Roger Federer knew who she was, had watched her matches? It didn't seem real, but it was. And what happened next would change everything. But this wasn't just a casual compliment. Federer had something else in mind, something that would send shockwaves through the entire tennis community. The conversation lasted only a few minutes, but it felt like an eternity. Federer asked about her season, her goals, her mindset. He spoke with the kind of genuine curiosity that made her feel seen, not as a rising star or a statistics line, but as a person, a fighter. And then he reached into his jacket pocket. Witnesses in the room would later describe the moment in vivid detail. Some thought he was pulling out a phone. Others assumed it was a business card. But when his hand emerged, it held a small, elegant box, deep blue, unmistakable. A Rolex box. Eala's eyes widened. Federer opened it slowly, revealing a Rolex Daytona, rose gold with a white dial, one of the most iconic luxury watches in the world. The kind of timepiece that costs more than most players earn in a year on the lower-tier circuits. "I want you to have this," Federer said calmly. "Not because of what you've achieved yet, but because of how you fight for it." The room had gone quiet. Other guests had noticed. Phones were already out, discreetly filming. Eala stood there, speechless, her hands trembling as she accepted the box. She tried to refuse, tried to say it was too much, but Federer shook his head. "You remind me of myself at your age. Hungry, relentless, but also doubting if the world would ever recognize it. Wear this, and remember, you belong here." Allah's eyes filled with tears. She managed a quiet thank you, but the words felt insufficient. Federer smiled, placed a hand on her shoulder, and walked away. She opened the box again. The watch gleamed under the sweet, soft lighting. But then she noticed something else. On the back of the case, an engraving. She turned it toward the light. To those who fight beyond the baseline. RF. Her breath caught. This wasn't a random gift. This was personal, intentional, a message from one fighter to another. But she had no idea what was about to happen next. Within 30 minutes, photos of the moment had leaked online. A blurry video showed Federer handing her the box. Another showed her reaction, tears in her eyes. The posts spread like wildfire across Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, and TikTok. And the internet exploded. What started as a beautiful gesture was about to become one of the most controversial moments in tennis, because not everyone saw it as inspiration. Some saw it as favoritism, and the backlash was brutal. The first wave of reactions was pure admiration. Fans called it a classy move, a legend uplifting the next generation. Federer's name trended worldwide within hours. Eala's follower count skyrocketed. Videos of the moment racked up millions of views. But then the tone shifted. Tennis forums lit up with questions. Why Alex Eala? Why not Coco Gauff, who had just won the US Open? Why not Iga Swiatek, the dominant force in women's tennis? Why not Emma Raducanu, who'd captured the world's attention with her Cinderella story? Some fans accused Federer of playing favorites. Others suggested it was a publicity stunt orchestrated by Nike. Both players shared sponsor. Conspiracy theories spread. Maybe Eala's team had paid for the moment. Maybe it was all staged for social media clout. The criticism grew louder. One viral tweet read, "Federer gave a Rolex to a player ranked outside the top 100, while actual champions get ignored. Make it make sense." Another said, "This is exactly what's wrong with tennis. The rich get richer, the stars get the spotlight, everyone else is forgotten." Even some players chimed in. Anonymously, of course. Quotes appeared in tennis tabloids. "It's hard to watch someone get handed opportunities while the rest of us grind in silence," one unnamed WTA player told a reporter. The backlash wasn't just online. Tennis analysts debated it on ESPN. Podcasts dissected it. Some defended Federer's right to gift whatever he wanted to whomever he chose. Others argued it sent the wrong message, that success in tennis was about connections, not merit. Eala stayed silent for the first 48 hours. Her team advised her to let it blow over. But the noise only grew louder. And then she posted a simple Instagram story, no caption, just a photo of the watch on her wrist and a quote overlaid on the image. "This isn't about the gift, it's about being seen." The post went viral instantly. Some fans rallied behind her. They shared her career stats, her struggles, her resilience. They pointed out that she'd been fighting through injuries, financial limitations, and lack of support for years, that she represented an entire generation of players who fell through the cracks of the tennis system. But others saw it as entitled, tone-deaf, a rising player flaunting luxury, while thousands of others fought just to afford travel to tournaments. The debate raged on, and at the center of it all was a single question. What did the watch really mean? The answer was buried in a conversation that almost no one knew about, a moment months earlier that explained everything. 3 months before Turin, Wimbledon 2024. Alex Eala had fought through 3 rounds of qualifying just to make the main draw. She lost in the first round, but not without a fight. A 3-set battle against a top 30 player that lasted over 2.5 hours. She'd given everything. And it still wasn't enough. After the match, she sat alone in the locker room, head in her hands. The disappointment was crushing. She'd worked so hard, sacrificed so much. And for what? Another early exit? Another reminder that she was still on the outside looking in? That's when Federer walked by. He was at Wimbledon as a guest, soaking in the atmosphere of the tournament he'd won 8 times. He noticed her through the open door, saw the slumped shoulders, the quiet devastation. He knocked gently on the doorframe. "Tough match out there," he said. Eala looked up, startled. She wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed. "I watched the last set," Federer continued. You didn't give up. Not once. That's rare. She didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. Federer stepped inside, sat down on the bench across from her. I lost in the first round of Wimbledon once, he said. 2002. I was the defending champion, and I got destroyed. I thought my career was over. Eala stared at him. She'd never heard that story. But I learned something that day, Federer said. The fight isn't always about winning. It's about showing up when everything in you wants to quit. That's what separates the good from the great. They talked for 20 minutes, about pressure, about doubt, about the loneliness of the tour. Federer shared stories from his early career, the times he questioned whether he was good enough, the moments he almost walked away. Before he left, he looked her in the eye. Don't let this sport break you, he said. You have something special. I can see it. Eala never forgot that conversation. It carried her through the rest of the season, through the injuries, through the losses, through the nights when she questioned everything. And now, months later, Federer had remembered. He'd followed her journey, watched her fight, and decided she deserved recognition, not for winning, but for refusing to quit. The engraving on the watch wasn't random. To those who fight beyond the baseline. It was a reminder, a symbol, a message to every player who felt invisible. But the world didn't know this story. Not yet. And when Eala finally decided to share it, the entire narrative shifted. But not everyone was ready to listen. 2 days after her Instagram post, Eala sat down for an interview with a tennis podcast. She hadn't planned to speak publicly, but the noise had become unbearable. She needed to set the record straight. She told the story of Wimbledon, the locker room conversation, Federer's kindness, the message behind the watch. This wasn't about favoritism, she said, her voice steady but emotional. It was about someone believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. That's all it ever was. The interview clip went viral. Millions watched, and the reactions were split. Some fans were moved. They flooded her comments with support, shared their own stories of struggling in silence, called her brave for speaking up. But others doubled down on the criticism. One former WTA player tweeted, I respect Roger, but there are hundreds of players grinding just as hard. Why does one person get the spotlight? A tennis journalist wrote an op-ed titled, The Rolex Controversy Exposes Tennis's Privilege Problem. The debate became less about Eala and more about the sport itself, the financial disparities, the lack of support for lower-ranked players, the way the system favored those with connections. Eala found herself at the center of a conversation she never asked to be part of. Meanwhile, other young players began to speak out. Some defended her, others stayed silent, a few hinted at jealousy. One rising star posted cryptically, "Hard work should speak louder than gifts." The tennis community was divided. And then Federer himself broke his silence. He posted a statement on his social media, short, simple, powerful. I've given advice, support, and yes, gifts to many players over the years, some publicly, most privately. Alex earned this moment not because of her ranking, but because of her heart. That's all that matters to me. The post ended the conversation for some, but for others, it only deepened the divide. Because in the end, this wasn't just about a watch. It was about what tennis values, and whether the sport was ready to celebrate fighters, not just winners. Months have passed since that night in Turin. The controversy has faded from headlines, but its impact lingers. Alex Eala's career took an unexpected turn. She won her first WTA title 3 months later. The confidence boost from Federer's belief in her was undeniable. In interviews, she still wears the watch, still references that moment as a turning point. But the bigger story is what the controversy revealed. It forced the tennis world to confront uncomfortable truths, that the lower-tier circuits are brutal, that most players struggle in obscurity, that recognition and support are often reserved for those who've already made it. Federer's gesture, intentional or not, became a symbol, a reminder that belief matters, that sometimes a single moment of validation can change everything. But it also exposed jealousy, resentment, the harsh reality that not everyone gets those moments, and that fairness in sports is an illusion. Eala has handled it with grace. She's used her platform to advocate for better support systems for lower-ranked players. She's spoken openly about mental health, financial struggles, and the loneliness of the tour. And Federer, he continues to mentor quietly, reaching out to players who remind him of his younger self, offering advice, encouragement, and sometimes gifts that carry meaning far beyond their price tag. The Rolex Daytona still sits on Eala's wrist, a reminder of a conversation in a Wimbledon locker room, a symbol of resilience, a message engraved in gold, to those who fight beyond the baseline. So, was this just a generous gesture from a legend to a rising star? Or was it a moment that exposed the deep inequalities in tennis? Maybe it was both. Maybe that's what makes it so powerful. Because in a sport obsessed with rankings and trophies, Roger Federer chose to celebrate something else. The fight, the heart, the refusal to quit. And in doing so, he reminded us all that sometimes being seen is worth more than any title.